Welcome to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hamaker. In each episode, she'll talk with your favorite romantic suspense authors. They will take you behind the scenes of the writing process, giving excerpts from their writing, and share stories about their writing life.
Alaskan Rescue by Terri Reid. A mountain search and rescue mission turns into a fight for their lives. Sent to find a wedding party that disappeared during a hike, Alaskan State Trooper Hunter McCord and his canine partner Juno discover bridesmaid Ariel Potter hanging from a cliff. But this was no accident. She was pushed, and her hiking companions are missing. Now it's up to Hunter and Juno to find them, and make sure whoever wants Ariel dead doesn't finish the job.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm so glad you joined me. Today, my guest is Terri Reid, whose romance and romantic suspense novel have appeared on a whole slew of best-selling lists. So you can read all about that in her bio. But I am just thrilled to have her on my show. Thanks for joining me, Terri.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
So Terri and I both write for Love-Inspired Suspense, which for those of you who don't know, they're a little bit, what are they called, like trade paperbacks? Is that the name, Terri?
Well, they're mass market paperbacks.
Mass market paperbacks. I knew there was, I knew it was one of those words, and I think I'm going to pick the wrong one. On national podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Which is a fun, I think a fun, they're a little shorter, a little smaller, but they're such a fun genre to write in for that length, I find. And you've written quite a few books for them.
Yes, I've written close to 50 so far for Harlequin's Love-Inspired. I started out in the romance line, actually, with my first 5 books, I think, 5, and then the rest have been the romantic suspense.
So what's your favorite thing about writing? Because this is a little bit of a shorter, there's only 2 points of view, the hero and the heroine. What do you like about writing in that little bit of a shorter format for romantic suspense particularly?
Yeah, for me it's the fast pace. I like just getting in and really digging in and getting the story told, showing the story as much as I can, and then getting out. It's just a very fast pace, and there's not a lot of room to meander into, other things that don't relate to the hero and heroine or to the plot, if that makes sense.
Right. No. I agree. That's what I think. I think they're more challenging to write than I thought when I first write them, because they are. Because you can read them so fast because they are very fast-paced. They're designed to be page turners. And I think when my agent suggested that I submit something to Love-Inspired Suspense, I was like, that'll be a piece of cake. Naive Sarah thought it was going to be so easy. But there's really a lot of thought, I think, that an author has to put into to keep it that crisp and focused. I like to look at it like that I didn't realize as a reader that it's not easy to write.
No, they're not. You don't have a lot of room to expound on any one thing. You have to really maximize your words, your choices that you use, the things that, the plot points, does this really further the plot? Maybe, maybe not. If it doesn't, then it needs to go.
Yeah, and I think that in a way, it was a lot of fun to write. I've enjoyed writing for that line because I think it challenged me in ways as a writer that I didn't expect. Like you said, I'm like, okay, well, that may be interesting, but I can't have a whole chapter on it. I need to reduce it. Because they need to have something else exciting happen to throw them in chaos and move along. So that, I think it's been quite the education. And I've enjoyed it, though. I've enjoyed it a lot more than I kind of initially thought I would.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've enjoyed writing for them, and they've been really good to me. So I have a lot of loyalty to our line, and I think all the authors that they have bought books from, they're all very, we're all different and unique in our own way, which is so great for the readers because there are so many books, 6 books a month come out, and each book is going to be different because we all have such different voices, but we all have this common bond of, one, our faith, and then of writing these short stories, not short stories, I shouldn't say that. It's a novel.
Yeah.
They're 55,000 words long. But, these shorter platforms to getting a story out. And so, I think it's a skill, and then the more that you do it, the better you get at it.
Yes, I know. It does get a little bit easier as you go along. I noticed that you had several, or maybe, I don't know if you've had other books. I might be missing you. I might not be remembering correctly as looking at all your books, but you said a lot in Alaska. Did you have several in Alaska, or am I misremembering?
So I have only set 2 books in Alaska, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so the book that's coming out, or that came out this month, Alaskan Rescue, is set in Alaska near Anchorage, and that's been a really fun series, and it's part of a continuity series. So there's 8 books and 2 novellas, and they're all set in Alaska. And then back, I don't even know how many years ago now, I had a book set in the Yukon.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Yeah.
So how do you pick the settings? I mean, did you just say, hey, I want to write about Alaska, or have you been to Alaska, or any other settings that you have?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question, interesting question. So for this book, The Alaskan Rescue, this is a continuity. So the editors actually came up with the plot. They came up with the setting. They came up with the characters. Then they give it to the author and say, here, make a story out of it. So it's kind of like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. But when I'm writing my own books, I just it depends on where my mood's taking me. If I want to write in, the South and do something a little more gothic, I've done a few of those. If I want to do something in the city, I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in New York, I've visited Boston. So I usually will try to fit a story in somewhere that I've either been or somewhere that I really want to learn about. So that's helpful. I wanted to go to Alaska for this book, but then COVID hit, and,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Stuck at home.
I know. That's why one thing that I think has been so wonderful for authors is COVID in a way, because so many more people were home and they started reading again more.
They did.
And
yes.
I think remembering how much they love to read.
Yes, I found that to be true too. I've actually even read more since COVID than before. I read a lot before.
Yes.
It's been an interesting journey.
It has, and I think, as writers, it's been nice to, kind of escape to a non-COVID world and write and, to the characters and stuff. That's been fun. But I have been very encouraged just to see that so many more people were reading, were buying books, were talking about books, were listening to audiobooks, than before, and that seems to be a trend that hopefully will continue, because I think books give us such a wonderful way to offer that little bit of an escape from everyday life, especially the romantic suspense genre. And I love that we're able to, take people away from whatever they're facing, and give them something to smile about at the end with that good, satisfying ending to our books.
I agree. That is very true. I have a lot of readers will write and say, your book really, lifted me up during a hard time or whatever's going on in their life. And that's always gratifying as an author to know that my book touched somebody's life, even if it was just to let them, like you said, escape, just to get out of their own head or their own circumstances for a few minutes or a few hours.
Yeah.
And, be blessed by, a book that, I labored over.
Yes. Blood, sweat, and tears. Always. Always. What is one of your favorite ways to connect with readers? I mean, we give them these books, but how else do you like to stay in touch with your readers?
Facebook has been such a great connector between readers and authors, and I belong to a couple of reader and author specific groups, and so that's been really fun to get to know readers on this level where it's somewhat personal, but it's not, but they're from all over the world, and that's been really fun. And then I also have a P.O. box where I receive snail mail, actually, people who actually do write snail mail still, and it's great, and I love to get those, and I'm not as good about writing back. I'll get a bunch of them and then try to send something out. So yeah, it's, and then I also have, Instagram, and that's always, I love the visual aspect of Instagram so that you can, get a glimpse into people's world visually as well as through writing. And so yeah, so those are my ways.
So what are some of the questions you hear, maybe from writers or friends or family when you say you write romantic suspense? What are some of the things questions people may ask you or say to you when you say that?
Oh, I've had several people ask, so does your husband appear in your books?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. Maybe as the hero there might be aspects of him, but I try to make everything fictional.
Yeah. That's a very diplomatic answer, Terri.
Yes. So my husband did read one of my books and said, I'm sure I was that villain. And I'm like, you might have been. I might have been angry at you when I wrote that book. Mm-hmm.
Oh, funny.
Yes.
I always have to remind my husband, oh, yeah, look, if you look at my Google search, don't be alarmed. I had to research, how to take foxglove leaves and kill someone with them. And I was like, I'm not going to go out in the garden and try to find some and put them in your tea, I promise.
Yes.
Yeah, but I find that sometimes, people hear romantic suspense and I think they think straight romance sometimes.
Right.
And there's something wrong with I love romance, so please, nobody get angry at I just mean that it is a different genre, though. There are different things about it. So that's what I find. I have to kind of do a little education with people about the genre. Yeah,
I would agree with that, too, especially when you add in the faith element. They'll be like, there's such a thing? Like, yes, it's a genre. It's a very niche genre, but it's a genre that is quite successful, actually. And I love the blend of putting the romance against the backdrop of this very intense, action-adventure scenario, and then interweaving faith in through that, and how, the hero and heroine, as they work together to overcome whatever obstacles I throw at them, they are growing closer to each other as well as learning more about their faith or growing in their faith. And that's always one of the best parts for me, I think, is just trying to figure out, okay, if I were in this situation, I'd be going, oh, help me, Lord. And relying on my faith and then on these growing feelings for this other person, but then yet knowing, okay, we still have to have the conflict of, okay, is this person really the person I want to, how does my heart really feel about this person? And having that push-pull of attraction and emotional intimacy going on between the characters while they're dodging bullets or, searching for clues.
Right, yeah. So so that brings me to, I always love hearing the answer to this question, Terri. Where do you find yourself being inspired to come up with your plots to your books?
Oh, that's a good question. And I find inspiration everywhere. I can, when I'm watching TV, I think, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing that they did, but what if I did this instead? Or looking at news feeds and just looking at the headlines and then taking the idea of whatever that headline is and flipping it or adding in something different to make it different so that it's not just so close to reality, but yet could be, if that makes sense. Because we want our books to have the verisimilitude that, okay, yeah, this is feasible. I could see how this could happen in real life. But it is fiction, and we get to have some license, so we get to do some things that might not actually. We hope that nobody ever actually really has to deal with.
Right.
That's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, my first love-inspired suspense, Dangerous Christmas Memories, was actually the idea for that came from a news story about two celebrities who got married in Vegas and didn't realize the marriage was real, so they kind of forgot about it. They kind of thought, we really it was a big joke or something, and they literally forgot for 20 years. I mean, one of them was going to actually get married, and I guess they were rich enough that their lawyer was I don't know why he was even looking to see if he was married before or something, and found out that he was still legally married to this other person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I thought, what would it be like to get married in Vegas and then forget you were married? So, which was, loosely based on, of course, the what ifs, but it was so interesting just to read about that and think, everyone would think that couldn't possibly happen in real life, and yet it did. It did.
Right. Truth.
They knew they got married, but they didn't think it was real. So it was the same kind of concept, which was just hilarious to me because, man, there are some crazy stories out there.
There
real
are
stories.
Right.
And I think it's kind of fun when we can take something like that and rework it into the fiction, and then we can just say, hey, this was loosely based on a true story, which I think is just bizarre in a lot of ways, but kind of fun.
Right.
Well, we are almost out of time, so I want to we'll ask one more question. What do you think is the most rewarding thing about writing romantic suspense?
For me, I think it's the journey of taking this couple from the moment that the suspense starts to a satisfying conclusion. I love when I get to the end and it all wraps up and I'm like, yes, the bad guy got his comeuppance and the good people are together and yay.
Yeah. Yay. I think that sums it up, Terri, because it's yay on that the book comes to a satisfying conclusion, but isn't also yay that the book is now done?
Yes.
I had a friend, another writer friend, who said, I love writing, she goes, but I love having written even more. And I thought, that is so true. I love that because I love writing, but I love having written, that sense of accomplishment when it's complete as well.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much for being on my show today, Terri.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to hearing how it turns out.
You have been listening to The Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and today I've been chatting with Terri Reid, whose romance and romantic suspense novels have appeared on Publishers Weekly Top 12, been featured in USA Today, and you can learn more about her through her social media links with this podcast. And stay tuned for an excerpt from one of her latest books, Alaskan Rescue.
Now an excerpt from Alaskan Rescue by Terri Reid. Ariel, hurry up! Coming. Are we sure we should be doing this? Ariel Potter glanced behind her. Nothing but trees and thick underbrush covered in layers of April snow. When Ariel's best friend, Violet James, had called her this morning to announce they were going on yet another wedding party excursion, which included Violet's fiancé, Lance Wells, and his best man, Jared Dennis, Ariel had anticipated maybe they were going sledding or even skiing. Certainly not hiking in Chugach State Park through the snow-covered forested mountains, one of the many natural wonders of Alaska. Their tour guide, Cal Brooks, had led them off the marked trail despite the signs clearly stating all hikers were to stay on the path. Anxiety fluttered in Ariel's stomach. They were breaking the rules, which wasn't cool. It's fine. Violet adjusted her sky-blue knit cap over her medium-length blonde hair. You worry too much. We're gonna lose the guys if we don't hurry. Shaking her head, Ariel trudged on, thankful for the waterproof insulated boots on her feet. A shiver traipsed down her spine, despite the warmth of her bright pink feather-down jacket. The area was so wild and remote, reminding her of the time when she was 6 and wandered from her family's campsite. It had been hours before she found her way back. Her parents hadn't even noticed her missing. Her fingers curled against the memory. She was thankful for the hand warmers inside her gloves. The Nikon D7500 camera hanging around her neck had grown heavy. The thing only weighed 1.5 pounds, but could be more like 20 if the pain tugging at her neck was any indication. She lifted it off her chest and snapped some pictures of Violet's retreating back and of the 3 men even farther ahead as they crested the rise and then moved out of sight. With a sigh of resignation, Ariel continued to trek through the snow. This was not how she wanted to spend her Saturday. She should be training her sled dogs for next weekend's last fun run race of the season, as well as seeing to the next breeding schedule, which was her main source of income. And there was the puppy to consider. Poor Sasha was no doubt confused to be sent to the neighbors for the day again. Not to mention, this week Ariel was going to be accepting an award for her skill at breeding champion dogs. The Iditarod had recently ended, and many of her champion Alaskan Husky sled dogs had placed in the top positions with their respective mushers, and she hadn't even started on her acceptance speech. The only thing she could come up with was thanking her nomadic parents for teaching her everything she knew about dogs, mushing, and breeding. Not that they would be in attendance. Her parents lived out of a travel trailer and rarely stayed in one place. It had been 6 months since the last time they'd stopped through Anchorage on their roamings. Ah, well, it was her own fault for letting Violet convince her that she could take the day off. Actually, another day in a long line of days off. As the maid of honor, Ariel could hardly refuse Violet, who was so excited about her upcoming nuptials. Lance Wells, the groom-to-be, had planned all sorts of wedding events over the past week. First, it had been whale watching, next, an escape room adventure, then line dancing, and now hiking on unmarked trails. Lance had insisted on this excursion, and Violet seemed to want to do anything that Lance said, because she was in love. Ariel didn't like the sour grapes twisting in her chest. At 29, she kind of despaired she'd ever find her Mr. Right. She wasn't looking, mind you. Love seemed like a risky endeavor, especially after the fiasco of her last boyfriend, Jason, a mistake she truly regretted. He'd seemed so sweet and kind at first, but then she realized it was a facade. She didn't care for the man he really was and had broken off their relationship. But still, she liked the idea of a grand romance. Up ahead, Violet crested the rise and disappeared. With a grunt of frustration, Ariel stepped up her pace. She was honest enough with herself to realize she was a tad bit jealous and sad because she was losing another friend to marriage. Violet and Lance's wedding would be the 5th one that Ariel had been involved in over the past year and a half. What was it about nearing 30 that made people decide it was time to marry? But Ariel really was happy for Violet. She was her best friend, and this was the first time she had been asked to be the maid of honor. However, Ariel couldn't banish the deep sense of unease niggling at the back of her mind. There was nothing specific that had her on edge lately, just this strange sensation that something dark lurked, waiting to strike. Giving herself a mental head slap for her silly imagination, she crested the rise onto an outcrop that ran along the mountainside. As her boots crunched over the rocks beneath the layer of hard-packed snow, she noticed her hiking mates were already starting up the next incline, and that she'd lost sight of Violet among the thick forest. Uh-oh. The altitude pulled at Ariel's lungs. Her breath came out in ragged puffs. Shielding her eyes from the overcast sky, she contemplated the next mountain. Really? They were going to hike up that now? Making a face, she turned to look out over the vista, needing a moment before she hurried after her friends. From this vantage point, she could see the majestic Denali Mountain, the tallest in North America, and the sprawling city that was Anchorage, the place she called home. Movement in the sky caught her attention. A bald eagle soared, its wings spread. The white tail and head were so bright in contrast to the bird's dark body. Though Alaska was home to the bald eagle, Ariel never tired of them. Seeing the majestic bird reminded her of the verse in Isaiah that said, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." She scrambled to lift her camera to take pictures. The eagle dipped lower. Ariel hurried along the outcrop to the very edge, where it narrowed, snapping off images as the bird dipped, clearly looking for dinner. The loud bang of a gun echoed across the valley. Startled, Ariel shivered, but chalked the noise up to hunters. She deplored that the state park allowed the hunting of one black bear per hunter from September through May. Refocusing on the eagle, Ariel continued to take snapshots as the bird dove below the tree line and out of sight. Staring down the side of the cliff made her dizzy. It was a long drop to the bottom with many trees and rocks dotting the landscape and jutting out of the side of the steep cliff. A moment later, the eagle swooped toward the sky with a hair dangling in its mouth. The bird turned in a big arc and headed right toward Ariel. Her heart stalled in her chest. These were going to be fabulous photos. From behind her, the rush of footsteps made her wince. No doubt Violet coming to retrieve her wayward maid of honor. As the eagle flew overhead, a hand on Ariel's back shoved her forward. Her feet lost traction. She slipped off the edge of the cliff, her arms flailing, the camera banging against her chest. A scream escaped her and echoed in her ears. "Lord, please help me!" She tucked herself into a ball and hit the side of the cliff, her body rolling over sharp debris. The back of her head slammed against something hard. Pain exploded through her. She cried out, terrified that she was going to die.
Thanks for listening to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hamaker. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. You can sign up to receive notifications of upcoming podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhamakerfiction.com.